This month we are ramping up to do the Twig Pendant make-along, and there are two very specific skills that you need in order to make this pendant. The first is balling ends of wire with a torch, and then the other skill is a modified version of the figure 8 weave that I use for these twig designs. Now, the basic figure 8 weave, I should say, works best over 2 core wires, and this is what that weave looks like. So to do this weave, you are literally just drawing a figure 8 around 2 core wires with your weaving wire. I don't know if you can see the way that looks there in the center, but there's sort of a perfect figure 8 formed around these core wires. This weave creates an interesting texture, and it creates a lot of definition between the 2 core wires, which is something that I really like. But this particular weave works best, in my opinion, on just 2 core wires. When you're using 3 or more core wires, as I am here, that sort of spring-like look, I don't love the way it looks in this particular design. So I use a modified version where I wrap twice around the outer core wires, and then I just pass over or under the center core wire, which of course is hidden by this design because of these accent wires that come around the helix. You can kind of get a peek of it there. You can see just a hint of that inner core wire. Notice how there's a larger gap between the wraps on the center core wire than there is on the outer core wire. So here's a sample of that weave in a flat format so you can see what it actually looks like. This is the weave that we're going to be doing for the twig earrings. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. For this demonstration, I'm going to be using some wood chopsticks. These are just disposable chopsticks that I pulled out of our takeout drawer. And this is 1/2 millimeter waxed jewelry cord. I'm going to use these materials to demonstrate the weave so that you can see a clear contrast between the weaving wire and the core wire. Okay, so let's get started. Disclaimer here, I am a left-handed weaver, so I demonstrate from a left-handed perspective. Obviously, I will be holding my core wire in my non-dominant hand, my right hand. But the way that I teach weaves applies whether you're left-handed or right-handed. So the first step, you're going to take your first core wire, hold it in your non-dominant hand, and then get your weaving wire and leave yourself a tail long enough. In this case I'm going to use about a 4-inch tail just so I can hang on to it easily. This wax cord gets a little bit slippery. And you just want to lay that wire behind your core wire. And then you're going to bring the long end, the weaving end of your wire over the front and drop it next to the tail. Now if you're left-handed, you're going to drop that on the left side of the tail. If you're right-handed, you're going to drop it on the right side. And this is really the only difference, folks. I've seen a lot of people get really tripped up about, left-handed versus right-handed weaving. It's not that difficult. We all do the same thing. We just do it in a different direction. So if you're right-handed, you're going to weave from left to right. If you're left-handed, you're going to weave from right to left. So that's it. You're just going to bring your wire from the back over the top and down, right next to your tail. Then you want to pick up your next core wire, and you're going to go behind both wires, and you're going to come over and around your second wire. So now you have a single wrap around each wire. And then we're going to do the same thing for this third wire. Now this is just to get started on our figure 8 weave. We're just binding these wires together. So again, we're going to go behind wires 2 and 3, over wire 3, and between the wires. So now we have a single wrap on each wire, and this is what it looks like in the back. You have a double wrap on each one. You see where you crossed over wires 1 and 2 and then to wires 2 and 3. So this is similar to how you would start modified sumac weave, and I just do this. This is just sort of a lashing binding pass that I use to get my wires sort of bound together. And now at this point we're going to begin our figure 8 weave. Now, we are doing this weave for my twig jewelry, and I do a modified figure 8. So I'll do a double wrap on the outside core wires, and then I just cross once over the middle core wire. So to go ahead and start my weave, I'm going to do another wrap around wire 3. I'm going to come out in front and then pass that wire back to the back. And now we're going to go around the back of wire 2 and to the front. And then here on the bottom wire, wire 1, we're going to go around once, twice, and we're coming up between wires 1 and 2, and then we're going to go over wire 2, and then we're coming up behind and around wire 3 once, twice, and then we're going behind wire 2, and then we're going to go twice around wire 1. So there's once, twice, and notice I'm just sliding these wraps into position as I weave. Now this weave, you know, it's a little bit fiddly when you first get started, and it's a little bit difficult to hang on to your core wires. So just play around with it, go slowly, and you know, adjust your wires as you weave. But notice what's happening here. So on our bottom and top core wires, we're completely covering the core wire because we have these double wraps. We're getting, you know, we're just getting a finished, almost complete coverage on that core wire. And the middle wire, we're not, because we have a gap of 2 wraps between each pass. And that just creates a little bit of extra texture on this weave, but it also finishes off your outer core wires. It just gives you a little bit neater finish. Now this technique works best when you're weaving figure 8 on 3 or more core wires. When you're just weaving it on 2 core wires, you end up with a different look that looks almost like a 2 and 2 wrap. But this double pass on the outer core wires is a technique that I typically only use on 3 or more core wires. So let's continue our weave. We just passed over the middle core wire, and now we're going to come around wire 3 once and twice, and then we're coming around behind wire 2, up between wires 1 and 2, and then we're going to go twice around wire 1, once, twice, and just slide your wires into place, kind of keep everything nice and neat and compact. So we went over wire 2, and now we're going to do the double wrap around wire 3. There's 1, 2. One thing I want to point out here, you know, I'm working with string, which is a very different material than wire. So, you know, I have a little bit more flexibility with string. When you're working with wire, you want to make sure you're laying your wire around your core. And I, you know, often use my finger on my free hand to sort of hold a wire in place. You really want to conform that wire to the shape of the core wire. And that'll help keep your weave neater, but it will also help keep your weaving wire from getting kinked and breaking. You don't want to use too much tension on your wire. You want to use just enough to keep a neat, even weave, but don't pull tight. Like I can, you know, I'm using string here, I can pull pretty tight, and nothing's going to happen. This cord isn't going to break. This cord is extremely difficult to break by hand. So I would be hard pressed to break this filament right here. But if this were wire, you know, putting too much tension will result in broken wires, and that's and that's no fun. So you want to keep steady, even tension on your weave, but not so much that you're, you know, really hauling on that wire, because that's going to weaken your wire as you work it. So let's continue our weave some more. We're going to go over wire 2, 2 passes around wire 3. So we're just going to continue on in that pattern, and this is what your weave is going to look like. Essentially, you will have full coverage on your outer core wires, and your inner core wire will have this sort of neat texture where there's a little bit of core wire showing through between passes on the wire. And that's it. Now I will go ahead and demonstrate this weaving right-handed as well, just so you can see that there really isn't much of a difference. You look at the back of this weave, it looks essentially the same. The difference, of course, is that the pattern is going to be shifted one step over. So like here we have these wires, and that's just because that binding wrap passed twice there, and then we added a third wrap. On this side, you don't see those binding wraps because we didn't cross over the front. They crossed in the back. So this would be the front of our weave, and you know, just make sure your binding wrap always ends up as the back of your weave, and that's your indication of the back right there, is that double pass binding. Okay, we did the left-handed demonstration. Now I'm going to demonstrate this modified figure 8 weave from a right-handed perspective. Just like we did on the left-handed weave, I'm going to start with my core wire. I'm just leaving, you know, that's a 4 or 5 inch tail there, and I'm coming from behind the wire, and then I bring my wire up and around the first core wire and just drop it next to that tail. So this is coming out on the right side of the tail, and then I'm going to go behind wires 1 and 2, and I'm going to repeat that single wrap around the middle core wire. So around wire 2 we're going to create 1 wrap, and then we're going to come back behind wires 2 and 3 and come over wire 3 with a single wrap. And that creates our binding, sort of a lashing weave, if you will. It just lashes your 3 core wires together. And again, if you look at the back of this, you have 2 passes. So this pass goes over the first 2 core wires, and this pass goes over the second 2 core wires. And then this is our tail coming out in the back, and this is our weaving wire coming out in the back. Okay, now that we've lashed our 3 wires together, we can go ahead and begin our weave. So I'm going to start by doing an extra pass around that top wire. I'm just going to slide that in there. And then I'm going to come around the back of wire 2. So we're not doing a complete wrap on that wire, we're just going around the back. And then we're going to come around wire 1 once and twice. So remember, on this 3 core wire, or this 3 core weave, I should say, we're going to do a double pass on the outer core wires. So we'll always go over wires 1 and 3 twice. And the middle wire, we're just going to pass over 1/2 of the wire essentially. So we're coming around, we're finishing that second wrap. So now you can see we have 3 wraps on that wire, 2 from this pass and 1 from our lashing pass. Now we're going to go over wire 2, and then we're going to come around behind wire 3 once and twice. You know, if you have some chopsticks laying around and some string or some yarn, this is a really great way to practice weaving patterns without wasting any material. You know, you can't really reuse weaving wire once you've woven it around core wires. It loses its strength pretty quickly. But this way you can practice your weaving patterns and get them down. Make sure you understand the weave before you start weaving wire. So this is a really good technique to try at home. It's a little bit fiddly, but you'll find that it really does help you. 1, you can see the weave pattern better, and 2, it just sort of helps you develop that muscle memory that you need to learn weaves. You know, this becomes pretty automatic once you've done it a few times. You'll get into a rhythm, and you'll be able to just knock out a weave almost without even paying attention. Something you can do almost automatically with very little concentration on it. So we went over wire 2, and now we're coming around wire 3 once, twice, and then we're going under wire 2. So this is an over under. We're always crossing our core wire as we pass between each of these gaps between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3. We're crossing the wire and we're switching direction. So now we're coming over one pass, 2 passes, and then we're going to go over wire 2 once, and then over and around wire 3 once, twice. And then we're going to come back up between, we're going behind wire 2, coming up in front of the weave, and we're going down and around wire 1 once and twice. And then up and over wire 2, and then around in front of wire 3 once and twice. So that's it. That's all there is to this weave. It's a simple weave. Just do, before you start working on a piece of jewelry, just give it a little practice run. Grab some string and some chopsticks. That's all you need. And see what you can do with this weave. It's a lot of fun. That's all for today, wire weavers. I hope you enjoyed this figure 8 weaving tutorial. In my next video, we're going to talk about balling the ends of wire with a torch, and then we're going to kick off the twig pendant make-along. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to subscribe, and if you know anybody who could benefit from Door 44 jewelry lessons, please be sure to share my channel with them. Until next time, go make something beautiful.